before to start, I would like to say that I'm very glad to be here for the third years to give lectures about the activity in the sales field we are managing at NIST Center. My name is Alessandro Damigno, and I was involved in the development and managing of the Raman Lab, which is located at NIST Center, which is a center which involves many departments of the University of Turin. The Raman Lab at NIST contains at least 3 range of instruments, which are equipped to work with several laser lines, starting from the near infrared, so the 785, towards the UV line, 244. They are all dispersive instruments, of course, so we want to use Fourier transform technique. And we develop some tools in order to allow measurements in several conditions. So after activating the sample and control the atmosphere like this is a very simple cell design in our lab. So you can put the sample for treatment here, then you can move the sample here, you can perform the measurement, the Raman measurement under the microscope, and if you want you can connect the cell to a vacuum line, so to reach vacuum, or to those cases if you are interested in studying the interaction of molecules with the solids. Then of course we can implement this cell with a copper tube where we can flow liquid nitrogen, so we can cool down the sample at liquid nitrogen, boiling nitrogen temperature. This is particularly useful if you want to study very weak interactions between molecules and surfaces, or if you want to reduce the possibility of destroying sample under the laser beam, which we are using to perform the measurement, in particular when we are using this highly energetic laser. And very recently we developed a new cell where we can insert a magnetic stirrer on which we can put the sample, and so we can rotate under a controlled atmosphere the sample under the laser beam, and this allows us to perform measurement with this laser also on very fragile molecules like polycondensate molecules and something like that. Of course, and then we also mount a mapping system on these instruments, which allows to get to perform Raman imaging, and we apply all this stuff to make study in catalysis or to characterize functional materials like carbons, hybrid polymer carbons, or something like that. We are starting to have some activity in cultural heritage, so we use Raman to characterize painting or gemstones in manufacture. We also use Raman to study the interfaces between the interaction between the surface of bioactive materials and biomolecules, and of course we are trying to develop something in the cells field. So before to show something about cells, I would like to introduce some basics concept of Raman spectroscopy. So, which is what is Raman spectroscopy? It is based on scattering of light. So when we analyze the light which emerges from a system which is composed by electrons and so an electronic cloud and positive nuclei, we see that we have at least 3 types of light. One which is the same the incident one, and 2 which has a frequency which is a little bit different with respect to the incident one. And typically, the light which has lower frequency is named Stokes. The light with higher frequency is named anti-Stokes. And we can record the so-called Raman spectrum, which is composed by 3 lines, like this. But which kind of information we can obtain from Raman spectroscopy? So, which is the origin of this nu? We have to consider that when the light is impinging on a system like this, so this is a molecule, this is ethylene molecule, for instance. We know that it is composed by positive nuclei, hydrogen and carbon, and it is surrounded by an electronic cloud. The electric field of the impinging radiation is exerting 2 opposite forces on the same but in the opposite direction on this system. So it displaces the electrons with respect to their position with respect to nuclei, positive nuclei, and we induce a net dipole, which is proportional to the applied electric field to this quantity, which is the polarizability of the molecule, which is a tensor, and it gives the describe how the electronic cloud is deformed by the interaction with the electric field of the impinging radiation. As we know that each component of this tensor is dependent upon the position of the nuclei, we can infer that vibrations, molecular vibrations, will affect its values, because during the vibration the nuclei are displaced from their equilibrium position along normal coordinates Q1, and which is varying in time through this quantity, which is nu1. It's the frequency which is associated to the normal modes. And for a complex system like molecules, we get 3n-6 vibrational modes if the molecule is not linear. Each one is associated to a particular normal coordinate and to its own frequency. So, of course, we don't know precisely how these components are varying during the vibration, so we have to use a Taylor expansion to describe this variation, and inserting this in this. At the end, we obtain this complex equation where we can see 2 terms. This one is responsible for the emission of Rayleigh light, so the light which has the same frequency of the incident radiation. And 2 other terms, this one and this one. One which is responsible for the anti-Stokes light, and this one which is responsible for the Stokes light. So we can start to imagine which kind of information we can collect with this light. We get the vibrations, the frequencies typical for the molecule. Okay, so this is a typical Raman spectrum. The anti-Stokes part is Stokes part, the Rayleigh part of coumarin, which is a molecule. And so we can use Raman, for instance, as molecular vibrations are like DNA for us, so it can be used to distinguish one molecule from each other. We can use Raman to distinguish molecular species in solutions, for instance, in mixtures. So if we have nitrogen, oxygen, hydrogen, we can distinguish we can characterize the solutions very precisely using molecular vibrations. We can distinguish groups in the same molecule. So for instance here, each group will give this particular frequency. And of course, we can use also this stuff to understand how they are modified by interaction with other species, type species which are populating the surface of catalyst and something like that. So Raman spectroscopy is a technique which can be used complementary to infrared one to define very precisely the type of molecules we are playing with. Of course, if you look to the scale of this is 1 million times higher in intensity. So the Rayleigh light is 1 million times more intense than Raman lights. So we are playing with the not so sensitive technique, and how we can increase the sensitivity of Raman spectroscopy. For instance, we can use resonant condition. What does it mean? Resonant condition means that we have to choose a laser line which falls in the electronic transitions of our molecule, of the solids we are studying. This is an example we produce in our lab. We are studying Phillips catalyst, which is a system useful to produce polyethylene, so it is a very important catalyst. This is the optical spectrum of the, and it contains tiny amounts of chromium-6, which is the active species during the catalytic process of activation of ethylene. So, can we use Raman to identify these species which are very polluted with respect to the support, which is the silica? I must say yes, because if you have the right laser line, and this is why in our lab in 12 years we work in order to have as much as laser line we can, because by studying the optical properties of the materials, you can see that chromium-6 on silica originates some beautiful, strong absorption in the visible region. We can match the right, we can choose the right laser one to fall exactly in the electronic transition originated by chromium-6. And you can see here how the spectrum is changing by changing the laser line. So the red one is obtained with a light which is very far from electronic transition, and we can see vibrations which are due to chromium-6 species, but not so intense with respect to silica support, which is responsible for this absorption. Unfortunately, with the green light we got huge fluorescence, and so we cannot say nothing. But when we move here by choosing a blue line, which falls here in this region where we have a huge electronic absorption, you can see that silica features are completely disappearing and just chromium-6 remains. And this effect is even more evident when we choose the 325 line. So we cannot see anything about the support and just vibrations which are involving the chromium-6. So Raman spectroscopy in resonant condition can be selective towards the species which we are interested in. Of course, to perform this play, we need a lot of laser. So this means that we have to have a lot of money. Not only to buy the laser, but also to maintain, because you know laser is like lamp, and after years of employment, the lamp is dying, and we have to replace the lamp, and this is also a costly procedure. Another way to improve the sensitivity of Raman spectroscopy is exploiting the Serres effect, as we learned this morning by two previous lectures. This is a very old effect, which was discovered in the 70s by studying the pyridine absorption on silver electrodes by Van Dyne. But also, I must say, this is a very important paper from Creighton, which demonstrated that it is important the nanostructure of the system to get cells, because he don't use electrodes but very defined gold nanoparticles and silver nanoparticles obtained by reduction with the sodium borhydrate, if I remember well. And you see the same effect, so the enhancement of pyridine ramancine, the vicinity of the matching of the laser light used to the plasmon peak of the system, of the colloidal system after addition of pyridine, as shown in this picture. These are the two plasmonic peaks of gold nanoparticles when you add pyridine to the solution. It starts red, then becomes blue. If you use a laser which is near to this huge peak, you will get the higher intensity as possible. So we can speak about resonance also in this case. Of course, you learned today morning, which is the main effect of cells, is coming from the enhancement of electric field of the impinging radiation due to the interaction with metal nanoparticles when we are in plasmon resonance, and why we increase the intensity of the peak when we increase electric field here. Who would like to answer to this?
Because of hot spot.
Not professor. You see before the relationship between the induced dipole and the electric field. So the intensity of the peak is proportional to the induced dipole. If you increase the electric field, you will increase the induced dipole, you will increase the Ramancine. So, okay? It's clear? It's not clear. Okay. So, we know that the intensity of the Raman peak is proportional to the induced dipole of the impinging radiation. When the impinging radiation is producing plasmon resonance, we increase the electric field of the impinging radiation at the surface of the particles. If a molecule is here, the total electric field will be higher, and so the induced dipole will be higher, and so the intensity of the peak will be higher. So this is the so-called electromagnetic enhancement. But of course, it has been shown that as the interaction of the molecule with metal nanoparticle is higher, the higher will be the effect. So people is speaking also about chemical enhancement, and sometimes it's very difficult to split and to decide between each other. But however, it works, and from 70s, many substrates were prepared, so you can use colloidal solutions of coinage metal, so copper, silver, gold. You can prepare quite easily by reducing salt precursor, by citrate, citric acid, sodium borhydrate, hydrazine, something like that. You will get this beautiful colloid solution. Then you have to add some aggregate, like sodium chloride or something like that, or sometimes just the molecule you want to measure. The color is changing. You are producing the plasma which is in resonance with your light, and you will get cells. Of course, here you have some problems due to contamination from residual chemicals you are using to make the reduction, so it is not so clean. And I must say, it is very hard for me to understand how we can identify a molecule which has some vibrations which are in common with these residual chemicals when we are in attomolar regime by this way. Because for sure the chemical you are using for reduction are concentration much higher. So I think it's very difficult to move along this direction for reaching high sensitivity. Or you have to find a way to clean perfectly your particles. Another way to prepare cell-active substrate is the approach developed by Van Dine group, which is based on nanolithography. In this group they are able to produce very beautiful, ordered substrates with well-defined, where nanoparticles has very defined shapes, very defined distances between each other, so they can play very precisely with the plasmon peak and something like that. But of course, the one difficult point is the preparation of this stuff, because you need to do lithography, so you need a very complex instrument to prepare the support, but however, should be for sure the optimal one. Then you can use polystyrene particles, covering them by silver or gold film to get the so-called AG or FOM, and they are very active, and of course by these two methods could be that you obtain very clean system that you can use to study your very limited species. Another simple procedure, this is more simple, is to prepare colloidal solution and deposit it on selenized microscope glass. So you have to prepare a microscope glass by selenization, and then you can deposit your colloidal solution on it to get a stable cell substrate. Because another difficult point of using colloidal solution is that when aggregation starts, you cannot stop. So after a while, you will have all gold or silver nanoparticles out of the solution, and you cannot measure anymore. Then there is another way to prepare a substrate which are active in cells, in which is also involved a professor of chemistry department in Turin, is to prepare microporous gold, which is obtained by electrochemical dealloying of some alloy of gold, silver and zinc, and you will get this beautiful substrate which is characterized by nanostructures. You can control the dimension of these nanostructures, so the ligaments and the voids and this protrusion, by controlling the time of duration of the electrochemical attack. And I'm working with this professor, and we are trying to understand if these supports are effective in preparing sensors or something like that, and it seems yes, but with some modification. And then of course you can buy yourselves substrate. Galena before named Clarite, which is now produced by, not produced, but acquired by Renshaw. This system is very, very active. The bad point is that it's, so for a package which contains 5 substrates, you have to pay 50 euros, not less. And they claim they are not reusable, so you can perform just one measurement and stop. There is another commercial started, which is produced by this factory is a substrate, which is more or less the same of ferrite. So it's a phenol gold which is deposited on nanostructured silicon. And also they claimed that they have the best substrate. I never tried this, and so I don't know. But however, the cost is the same as ferrite, more or less. Instead, at NIS, what we are doing at NIS in preparing cells-active substrate. So before to show you some of our results, I would like to stress that we are working not just to produce the best cells substrate, but to produce a substrate which allows us, first of all, to